Manure Applicator and certified.
And you're lucky. I almost named this presentation A Decade of Dan, but that would only be funny to me. So I've been doing this program for about a decade now. So yeah, see, yeah. So we've been doing it a while. It's a program that started in 1998. So I inherited it when I started at Iowa State University, and they said, "Good luck. You're in charge of it now, and do what you want to do." Which is always interesting to take an audience that's been there for a while, and then someone completely new has to come talk to them, right? And I was fresh out of school, so even better. So I'm going to try and talk to you what we've done. One of the things we tried to do is more hands-on stuff, so that's specifically what I'm going to be talking about today. So what is Iowa Manure Applicator Certification? Well, if you reside in the state of Iowa and work with manure, either as a confinement operation that has more than 500 animal units, you have to come to 2 hours of training annually. So if you want a fun audience, require them to be there, right? Like that always leads to people who want to be happy and really want to be there. And that's not so bad. I feel like they actually want to hear about manure. They get to make manure decisions. But if you are an employee for a commercial business, you have to come see me for 3 hours every year. And if you want people who are really happy, they do what they're told by a farmer. And they're like, I have no say over this. And I'm like, well, you still have to be here for 3 hours. So it was a really fun program to start with. But I feel like we made a lot of progress on that. The other thing to say is we actually have to offer 3 programs. So one for the confinement site, the 2 hour one for commercial applicators, so that's the 3 hour one. And then we do one for solid manure because they said they don't like hearing about all that liquid stuff. So we offer 3 of them, and we offer 3 different delivery mechanisms. The most fun one is in person. So if you ever actually want to have fun, you have to come see me. If you don't like the way I talk, then you can go choose to watch a video. Bad news. I star on the video most years, so you're still stuck with me. But you don't have to interact with me. So, there's that benefit. And then one of our state legislators said, I can get certified to carry a firearm online. Why do I have to go see you to get a manure application permit? And they said, you should offer this online too. So we have to offer it in 3 different ways. I'm not really going to talk about the other 2, but tons of fun to try and maintain 3 different things all at the same time. So for a long time, we did traditional lecture-based trainings. It was passive, limiting retention of information, and frankly, it wasn't very engaging, right? Like, it works, and there are certainly farmers who still are like, I wish you'd show up and be a talking head. I won't say everyone enjoys the hands-on activities. I read the comments and they say, we would like you to be a talking head, leave us alone. But there are lots of them who enjoy different things. But I said, that's no fun. I have to go give the same presentation 72 times in the state of Iowa. And that gets really boring for me. I don't want to do that. So let's see what we can do to be more hands-on, more engaging, and get them to talk back with us. I think research has shown pretty strongly that doing stuff improves learning retention, and generally they like conversation. And then I really wanted discussion and community engagement because I never give the same presentation twice, right? And I'm sure most of you had that same issue. It's more fun if they interact with you. So some of the things we did, I started trying to do things in 2014. I will admit some years I'm much better at it than other years. And oftentimes it depends on how stressed I am. So need to take the livestock mortality management training to manage my stress better to know what's going on. But we tried to introduce at least one thing every year. So one module out of the 3 hours. Some years we've ventured into 2, and we focused on real world scenarios and hands-on exercises. But explicitly, everyone was tried to give time for the applicators to talk to each other and then hopefully report back to us. Since we do this 72 times in the state, I wasn't taking a full-size manure spreader all over the state of Iowa. That just wasn't on my list of things to do in January and February when it's snowy and cold. So things had to be relatively small, right? So when you see what we did, a lot of it's going to be on the smaller side. And one of the things as we started doing this was, how do I talk to the people who help me deliver these programs? Because I don't go to every single one, only a lot of them, to understand what we're trying to do and why. And they had a fair amount of pushback to start with. They were like, we like being the expert of the room. We like that you hand us resources and say, go. Why are you messing with this? And I was like, because I don't like doing it that way and I want to, right? But it took a little convincing, especially that it was going to be less formal and that we wanted to encourage conversation. Because if you encourage conversation, you get hard questions, like questions I don't want to have to talk about, questions I don't want to have to answer. Especially like, I have a solids problem in my pit. What should I do about it? Have you tried agitating? No, right? Because a lot of them there are no good answers for, or an answer doesn't exist. And you're going to have to be faced with those situations and stand up in front of people and say, here are some things to consider. We don't actually know the answers. And that's okay. So some examples of things we tried to do. We made a biosecurity bench with GlowGerm. And I live in a hog state. Grand scheme of things, do you think we take biosecurity relatively seriously in Iowa? They claim they do, right? So every one of them said, we know biosecurity. We get trained on this by their integrator. We made them cross over that bench, whole bunch of glowing germs sprinkled on the outside, into the front end side. Made them go over the bench, and then we said, how much glow germ made it to the back side of the bench? Out of the 72 meetings, how many times do you think we didn't find glow germ on the backside? Two. We did two, which is pretty good, right? Yeah. And of course, that means, and most of the time, we had contamination. And these are from swine guys who say, this is important to us. We do this. We also had a presentation to go with that, but I think it offered a lot of conversation, a lot of teasing about people who showed up with holy socks those days and took off their shoes, which is always fun too. The good news about the teasing about holy socks is it led to people sharing times they tipped their manure tanks over into the ditch and lots of pictures, which I always like to see. Not that I like them tipping over in the ditch, but when it happens, it's at least nice to get a few resources about it. Another activity we did is we did some examples of stockpiling locations. Many of the people who come to the training for solid manure are like, I drive the truck from point A to point B. Why do I actually need here? What do I need to do? You know, the stockpile location that I should put it in is flagged when I show up to the farm. I'm making zero decisions. And we're like, yes, but we've seen where you all put stockpiles, and they're not the best locations. We would like you to actually drive there, look at where the flag is, and say, maybe that's not where I should put a stockpile location down. So what we did is we got some Google Earth maps, right, of fields, told them this is where they're coming from, made them look at the maps. We also gave them some topographic maps and soils maps. Sometimes that's useful, sometimes not so much, depending on who is there and who is helping with it. Some of them are like, yes, I love the soils maps, and some of them are like, looks like Greek to me, doesn't mean anything, right? But since we have a wide range of people attending, it did lead to some good conversation about it. One of the things that has to happen is you do have to go around to each group and facilitate a conversation to get them started. As I've done more of these from year to year, I get to do less of that and enjoy my life a little bit more. But the first few years was really a lot of hand holding of like, we're going to do this no matter what. All right, this is a fun one because as I came up with this idea, all my co-instructors told me I was crazy that they would never do this. So we got these watershed models. They come not painted, annoyingly, right? So I had to paint every one of them. I didn't. I paid undergrad students to paint every one of them. Full disclosure, right? I don't paint anything. And then we were like, put a stockpile somewhere on here, and here's some Play-Doh, and we're going to put a rainstorm on this thing, and it can't wash away. Now, that's stupid. I admit, it is fully stupid, right? Except that's what we tell them to do in the real world with the stockpile to figure out how to not have it flow away. So it led to great conversations about what people were doing when something went wrong. And they actually did it and smiled and talked to us about it. One of my favorite things to do is something we call a carousel exercise. We hang some posters up along the wall, generally with a couple questions every year, make them rotate through each one as a small group. I'm sure many of you have done this as well. Have a little conversation about it, and then we report back. And one of the things we put up there is what manure questions do you have, right? So it gives us an idea of what we might want to talk about next year and what's on their mind. So one of the things we did this year was a conversation about cover crops. At every one of our meetings, so all 72 of them, I get a poster that looks something like this. If I'm lucky, other people take the posters and post it in my digital box for me. If I'm not lucky, at the end of the year, whoever helped me with the meetings are like, here's my 10 posters, and then I have to take a picture and put them on a side box. Jake here was kind enough to help me take posters of a whole bunch of them this year as they were hanging up in my office. Once we have those, I try and report back next year, like, what did you all say and what does it mean? So we do this sort of word cloud form, or what were the biggest words that we tended to see there, right? What are some things going on? And then I test for you. I try and use that as a needs assessment of where they're at. So with cover crops, I tried to break down everything they reported on that poster and say, which one of these categories do I think it sort of falls in, and what does that tell me I should be doing for them all next year? FYI, ChatGTP is a godsend for organizing some of that data. Just for the record, I used to try and do it by hand, and I feel like this does way better than I ever did trying to sort it. But they do actually give a fair amount of good conversation and good feedback on like what are they thinking. For example, on cover crops, we still often show up and say, cover crops are good at reducing soil erosion, cover crops are good at reducing nitrogen loss. And they all show up and say, yeah, but we all actually know that already. That's not why Iowa only has 5% of our acres in cover crops. You need to talk about something deeper. All right, I have been trying to evaluate success a little bit better. Okay, so we train somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,500 people annually. This data, everyone, we hand out the survey during the meeting. You would think that means everyone fills it out. Of course, it doesn't mean they fill out every question on the survey. Mine are on paper, so I have to sort through them. I don't sort through any of them. I pay people to sort through them for me and give me feedback on them. So out of the 4,500, generally for most of these questions, we have somewhere around 4,000 people answering, plus or minus 100. Some of the tougher questions, we'll have fewer people answer. What tougher means is debatable. It means they didn't like what I worded in some cases. So this last year, we asked them, do you enjoy the hands-on activities? About 90% of them said yes. 10% said no. Go back to being a talking head and let me sit in my seat the whole time, right? They didn't actually say that. Some of them do say that and write that in the free response section. Some of them are mean, though, just for the record. Like, some of them will watch the video and say, you really look bald this year. Like, you don't have to comment on my hair, all right? I understand where I'm at. And then we asked, does it increase learning activity? And about 85 said that yes, hands-on stuff made them feel like they learned more. I will say we worked through some challenges with the people helping me facilitate the program to start with, but it has gotten easier with time as they feel like people have interacted with them more. But originally, it was a little tough to convince them. One of the things Iowa has collected for a long time, back to about the year 2000, is how many manure spills we have every year, and then how many of those manure spills make it to surface waters. So we started doing this in about 2014, right about there. And lo and behold, look, we went from about 50 manure spills per year down to around about 30. So a nice reduction. Obviously, that's not all me, right? It's not all this training. It's lots of other factors put together, but the commercial manure applicator said I could take credit for it. So I'm going to take credit for it while I stand up here. We did improve water quality impacts as well. We went from about 11 spills reaching a stream a year down to 10. Not as much improvement as you'd like. Turns out when you use a drag line and you're moving 6,000 gallons a minute, manure moves pretty quick when you have a spill, right? So some challenges to go with that, but we are doing a good job of at least reducing some of the spills that were occurring. All right, so a few things we tried to do here. I think it has been relatively effective. They tend to like it. I feel like I get a lot more conversation. I'm in great shape because I'm on the last couple slides. So there has been significant reduction in spills. That's what we wanted to see. I think that's been great for programming, great for understanding what we're doing better. I said I'd tell you some of the other things that contributed to that. Come on, everyone's put flow meters on. Most of my guys are using automatic shutoffs. Huge improvement, right? There's been more use of umbilical manure application, so less road traffic, less chances to tip over the ditch. I think from my perspective, they become much more talkative, sometimes too talkative, right? We won't get through. On a video, we have to fill 2 hours of information. In person, I have the same PowerPoints, and we're lucky to get through half of the stuff we had designed for that year, right? Which is great. I don't mind at all. Some of my colleagues hate that. They're like, I didn't get through all of it. And I'm like, you should see how bad I am at getting through things, right? Because we like to talk too much. But if they're involved in talking, it's at least better than us talking at them. So that was some of the things we're doing, and I think it's working reasonably well. And I bragged up some of our manure spill successes. In this next one, I'm going to say one of the things we've been working on is timing of manure application. So I'll show you some data on how we're doing for that, and it won't be quite as chipper and cheery.